What is up, guys? Random here with your Week 2 Fantasy LCS predictions. In this video, I'm going to break down all of the matchups for NA and EU LCS. I will be discussing the results from Week 1, so this is your spoiler warning. I thought Week 1 was incredibly entertaining. There were a lot of upsets, there were a lot of unexpected picks. So if you haven't seen some of the videos, I highly encourage you watch them. Just a lot of really great games that were all very surprising. But I really want to try and focus on week 2 in this video, so let's get right into it. So the summary for week 2, this is kind of the TLDR. If you guys can't watch the entire video, if you're looking for easy points, you want to pick up players that are on G2, Immortals, Shaka, Cloud9, Echo Fox, and Fnatic. Conversely, the people that you don't want to play this week are Roccat, Team Liquid, Energy, Origin, Phoenix, and Giants. And then the kind of the middle tier players that are kind of more riskier picks but could really pay off for you guys this week that I'm going to go into a lot more detail in the remainder of this video are players that are on TSM, H2K, CLG, Vitality, Envy, Splice, Apex, and Unicorns of Love. So this is my rankings currently for NA and EU. This does not necessarily correspond to the actual rankings, nor does it is who I think is going to win the split necessarily. But right now I have Immortals and TSM. They are the S tier teams in NA. I feel like just beneath them, kind of in an A tier, are Cloud9 and Apex. Fighting for those last kind of playoff spots are Echo Fox, CLG, and Envy right now, on kind of a B tier. And then C tier is Team Liquid, Energy, and Phoenix. Over on the EU side, I definitely think the G2 and Fnatic are the top teams. They are S tier in EU. H2K and Schalke are right behind them at A tier. Vitality, Roccat, and Splice are fighting in the B tier. And then I have Unicorns of Love and Origin as C tier, and Giants is in their own special category because they don't look good at all right now. They are in D tier. The nomenclature for this video to help you understand some of the things. If the win, tie, or loss is in white, that means I think it's going to be a normal game. It's going to be about 30 to 35 minutes. You can expect kind of normal point values for that game. If the win, tie, loss is in red, that means I think the game is going to be a stomp. These games do have the potential for the winning team to get a lot of points, but sometimes they end so quickly that the winning team does not get that many fantasy points. We saw that a lot with G2 in week 1. Conversely, if the win, tie, loss is in blue, that means I think that the game's going to be really, really close. And typically we see in really close games that there's a lot more kills, there's a lot more deaths, there's a lot more assists, which means that there's a lot more fantasy points. So these are kind of the high fantasy point games, but they also have they're much higher risk because if he loses, then they're much more likely to get less fantasy points. But if they win, they'll get much more fantasy points than kind of the more safer bet teams. And then new to this week, next to each player's name are 2 letters. The first letter is what I thought they were going to, what tier I thought they were going to be in week 1. And the second letter is what tier they actually were based on the points that they got in week 1. And that's going to help me explain how I think that the rankings are going to move around in week 2. So for the teams, the S tier teams I think in week 2 are going to be G2, Cloud9, Schalke, and Echo Fox. G2 was S tier last week, so it makes sense that they're going to be S tier this week. They have comparable opponents. Cloud9 played fantastic last week, very surprising. They ended up going 1-1 this week. They'll go 2-0, which will push them from B tier to S tier. Schalke was another team that was very surprising. They were A tier last week. They have an easier week 2. They're going to go 2-0, which is going to push them up to S tier. And then finally, Echo Fox was another team that went 1-1, was A tier. This week they will go 2-0, which will push them up to S tier. This will in turn cause Fnatic and TSM to drop from S tier last week to A tier. TSM is going to go 1-1 this week, I believe. They're going to lose a very close game to Immortals, which is definitely going to hurt their fantasy points a little bit. And then I have Immortals going to be doing slightly better in fantasy points in week 2, which moves them from B tier to A tier. Apex and Envy were kind of two major surprises in week 1. In week 2, they have much harder weeks, so that is going to drop them down to B tier. And then H2K has a very comparable week to week 1, which is going to keep them at B tier. Rounding out the C tier teams, I have CLG, Unicorns, Love, Splice, Vitality, and Rocket. All of these teams have very comparable week 2s to week 1, so they're not going to really move that much. They were all C tier last week, so they're probably going to be C tier this week. The same can be said for the D tier teams, which are Origin, Energy, Liquid, Phoenix, and Giants. Moving on to top lane, my S tier top laners are Impact, Huni, Odoamne, and KFO. Impact played fantastic in week 1. He was S tier last week. He'll be S tier again this week. Huni just barely missed S tier, as well as Odoamne. This week, I think they're going to get a couple more fantasy points, which will push them back up into S tier. And then another kind of surprising player for me was KFO. He just barely missed B tier in week 1, and that was when Echo Fox went 1-1. This week, I think Echo Fox is going to go 2-0, but I think the games are going to drag on a little bit longer. He's going to get a few more fantasy points. That's going to probably be enough to push him up into S tier. This is definitely a riskier pick, but it definitely could pay off for you guys. Moving on to A tier, I have Gamsu, Hanser, and Steve. Gamsu and Hanser were S tier in week 1. I think that they're going to drop a little bit in week 2, especially TSM. They're not going to go 2-0 this week. Steve did fantastic for Shaka. He was B tier last week. Shaka is going to be even stronger in week 2, which is moving him up to A tier. And then we saw that Ray and Seraph did fantastic in week 1, but week 2, both Apex and Envy have harder schedules, which is going to drop them to B tier. Kikis from G2. G2 stomped their opponents in week 1, and they didn't get a lot of fantasy points as a result of that. I think that something similar is going to happen in week 2, which means that Kikis is going to stay at B tier this week. Moving on to C tier, I don't think there's that many surprises here. I have Darshan, Cabochard, Vivasachi, Parang, and Wonder. They were all kind of C tier players. Parang was actually B tier last week, but Rocket has a much harder schedule in week 2, which is going to drop him back down. And then rounding out the D tier, I have Soaz, Lorlo, Quas, Zig, and Smitty J. All right, moving on to jungle. My S tier junglers are Meteos, Yankos, Spirit, and Rainover. Meteos and Yankos and also Spirit did fantastic in week 1. I think that nothing's really going to change in week 2. They're going to do just as well, so they'll be at the top of the list. Rainover just barely missed out on S tier last week. I think Immortals is going to get some more fantasy points this week, and Rainover will be back up into S tier. Moving on to A tier, I have Svenskeren, Shrimp, and Gilius. Shrimp was S tier last week. Apex has a harder schedule this week, which will drop him down to A tier. Svenskeren will play comparable to how he did last week, which will keep him at A tier. And then Shaka, I think, is going to have a really good week this week, which is moving Gilius from B tier to A tier. For my B tier people, I have Trick, Hard, and Xmithy. All of these people were C tier last week. I think that all of them kind of underperformed last week, and I think that all of their teams are going to do better this week, and they're going to move up to B tier as a result of that. Moving on to C tier, I have Airwalks, Trashy, Proxen, Move, and Amazing. Trashy and Proxen did really well in week 1, but both Splice and Envy have very hard schedules this week, which is going to drop them down. Airwalks also did really well, but he's going up against G2 and Vitality, so that's also dropping him down into C tier. Then rounding out the D tier, I have Santorin, Mighty Bear, Moon, Sentinel, who I'm not sure if he's even playing this week. They might be going back to Inori. So yeah, definitely don't play him. And then Maxlor from Giants will also be D tier. Okay, moving on to mid lane. For the S tier mid laners, I have Jensen, Fevibin, Fox, and Bjergsen. Jensen, Fevibin, and Bjergsen were all S tier last week. I think they will be S tier this week as well. And then Fox from Schalke, he was A tier last week when his team was 1-1. I think that Schalke is going to go 2-0 this week, which is going to push Fox into S tier this week. For A tier, I have Ryu, Huhi, and Froggen. Ryu is going to have a very comparable week to week 1, which is going to keep him in A tier. I think Huhi is going to do better than last week. He was a B tier mid laner last week when Counterlogic Gaming went 0-2. I think they're going to go 1-1 this week, which is going to push him up to B tier. And then Froggen was B tier last week, even though Echo Fox was 1-1. I think they're going to be 2-0 this week, which is going to move him up to B tier. For the B tier mid laners, I have Keen, Pobelter, and Perch. Keen was S tier in week 1, but Apex has a much harder week 2, which is going to move him down accordingly. And then Pobelter and Perch were actually C tier last week. I think they're going to get slightly more fantasy points in week 2, but I still have them at B tier until they actually have a breakout week. For the C tier, I have Ninja, Betsy, Nukeduck, Exile, and Senkux. Ninja and Betsy did really well in week 1, but their teams have much harder week 2s, which is going to bring them down into C tier. And then for the D tier, I have Phoenix, GBM, Slushy, Power of Evil, and Knight. I don't think there's any surprises there. A lot of these teams are struggling, and their mid laners are struggling accordingly. All right, for 80 carries, I have Sneaky, Reckles, Wild Turtle, and Double Lift. These guys were all kind of top of their class last week, and I think they're going to remain at the top this week. They all have, very good schedules for week 2, so no surprises there. For A tier, I have Stixay, Mr. Rallis, and Keith. I think CLG is going to do better this week than they did last week. And 6A was already B tier last week, even though CLG had a horrible performance. I think he's going to move up to A tier this week. Mr. Rallis from Schalke did really well, was a B tier last week. I think that Schalke is going to perform even better this week, which moves him up to A tier. And then Echo Fox, I think, is going to have a really strong week, which moves Keith up to A tier as well. Apollo and Laud had very strong week 1s, but their teams are going to be struggling in week 2, which drops them down to B tier from A tier. And then Sven, even though G2 played really well, won both of their games, he didn't get that many fantasy points. I think he's going to get more fantasy points this week than last week, which is why I'm moving him from C tier to B tier. For the C tier 80 carries, I have Freeze, Piglet, Steelback, Kobe, and Veritas. Steelback and Kobe were much higher rated last week, but Rocket and Splice have very hard week 2s. Freeze and Piglet did not perform as well as you would expect. I think that they're going to continue to struggle a bit this week. Freeze seems like he hasn't really fully clicked with H2K, and Team Liquid is obviously struggling, so Piglet's going to stay at C tier. And then rounding out D tier, I have Forgiven, MASH, Police, OHQ, and Sunstar. I know a lot of people are going to say, why is Forgiven down at D tier? It's because Origin is not playing well, and Forgiven doesn't normally get that many fantasy points anyway. Even when he was on H2K, and H2K was dominating, he wasn't getting that many fantasy points. So actually Forgiven last week was D tier, and I think he's going to remain in D tier this week. All right, for the supports, my S tier supports are Yellowstar, Adrian, Biofrost, and Afromoo. Yellowstar, Adrian, and Biofrost were all S tier last week, so I don't think there's any surprise that they're going to be S tier this week. Afromoo was an A tier support last week when CLG went 0-2. That's remarkable. That's amazing that he was able to get that many fantasy points, even though CLG performed really poorly. I think CLG is going to perform better this week, and if Afromoo is A tier when CLG is horrible, then he's going to be S tier when CLG plays, decently. Moving on to A tier, I have Spraddle, Big, and Xpecial. I think Schalke is going to do well this week, as well as Echo Fox, which puts Spraddle and Big in A tier, and then Xpecial did fantastic on Apex in week 1, but Apex is going to struggle a bit more in week 2, which is going to move him from S tier down to A tier. For B tier, I have Hakuo, Mithy, and Vander. Hakuo did really well on Envy. Envy will struggle more this week. That brings him down 1 tier. Mithy and Vander, I think, had really low fantasy points from what I would expect. I think they're going to do better in week 2, which brings them from C tier back up to B tier. For C tier, I have Bunny Fufu, Raze, Minx, Hillisang, and Matt. So the reason why Bunny Fufu is C tier is because right now him and Smoothie are splitting games. So in week 1, Bunny Fufu played 3 games and Smoothie played 3 games. I don't know what Cloud9 is going to do in week 2. So if you're going to play a support from Cloud9, just beware that that player may not play. They could go 3-3 again, or they might give Bunny Fufu all the games, or they might give Smoothie all the games. So it's a really high risk to put in a support from Cloud9 this week until we figure out who the starter for Cloud9 is. Raze and Minx did well last week, but Rocket and Splice are going to struggle more. And then I don't think there's any surprises with Hillisang and Matt being C tier. D tier, no real surprises. All the D tier supports from last week are going to be D tier this week. So I have Kasing, Hybrid, Kiwi Kid, Hustlin, and Gate. So yeah, in conclusion, if you're looking for those easy points, you should be having players from G2, Immortal, Shaka, Cloud9, Echo Fox, and Fnatic. They definitely have the easiest weeks. If you're looking for possibly higher risk, higher reward players, you definitely want to go towards TSM, H2K, CLG, Vitality, Envy, Splice, Apex, and Unicorns of Love. And then the players that you don't want to play this week are players from Roccat, Team Liquid, NRG, Origin, Phoenix, and Giants. So anyway, let me know if you guys enjoyed this video. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. I wanted to thank all you guys for all the views I got last week. I think I got 20 new subscribers. So if you guys are going to the forums or posting my videos online, please keep doing that. That's really helping my numbers get up. I'd like to grow this channel and help as many people as I can. So I greatly appreciate any support you guys give me. Also, let me know what your favorite moments from week 1 were in the comment section, and let me know if you guys think there's going to be any upsets in week 2. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. This is Randomonium signing off.